revealed how a 26M inheritance uncovered family secrets. When I stood up to my parents' demands, Emily Dawson sat behind her desk, the dim office light casting shadows on a list of mundane tasks. As she double-checked off another item, the weight of the law firm pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Her parents' voices echoed in her mind how they expected her to follow the family plan, to become the firm's leading attorney and uphold their modest legacy. It wasn't that she couldn't. It was that she didn't want to. Every day, she stared out the window, dreaming of a life bursting at the seams with creativity, far removed from the structured confines of her family's expectations. The news hit her like a freight train. Her estranged grandfather had passed away, leaving her an inheritance of $26 million. The joy of unexpected freedom warred with an impending sense of doom as she approached her parents to share the news. Their initial reaction was sheer disappointment, their faces slipping into grimaces of despair. "You know what we've built here," her father said, his voice tight. "This is your responsibility, Emily." Their dreams of a perfect succession loomed over her like dark clouds. Her thoughts swirled as she delved into managing the estate. Among the dusty remnants of her grandfather's life, she stumbled upon a hidden art studio. The door creaked open, revealing a sanctuary of color. She felt as if she had stepped into another world, a place where her grandfather once nurtured creative souls. Hidden masterpieces and unfinished canvases spoke of aspirations unfulfilled, igniting a flicker of passion within her. What if, just maybe, she could reclaim a part of herself long buried beneath mundane responsibilities? Yet, with each brushstroke of hope, fear crept closer, gnawing at her resolve. What would her parents think? Would they see her as a failure for abandoning the family legacy? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The whispers of disapproval from her parents constantly swirled in her mind. A mental image of her mother's disappointment pierced her resolve each time she approached the easel. As Emily painted, exploring her newfound creative identity, guilt churned like a storm within her. She missed her parents' approval, yet the allure of the brush called, promising the freedom she so desperately craved. Encounters with an elderly artist in the neighborhood turned into a lifeline, but every laugh shared and every lesson learned bore the weight of familial expectations. Their conversations often turned to dreams unmet, showcasing her grandfather's haunting legacy. Each realization chipped away at her heart, revealing the shadows of anger and dreams thwarted that haunted her family, a cycle repeating with each generation, frightfully echoing the last. The tension erupted one evening when her parents confronted her about what she planned to do with the inheritance. "We've sacrificed so much for you to become the attorney we envisioned," her mother insisted, eyes fierce with frustration. Emily felt the heat swell in her chest, her insides churning. "I want to honor my grandfather's legacy by following my own passion, not just yours," she said, her voice trembling yet resolute, as she faced the harsh backlash of their expectations. As silence engulfed the room, she trembled at the anger reflected back at her. Could reclaiming her own identity truly sever the ties that bound her to her family, or would it create room for both her aspirations and theirs? Unsure whether to give in or fight for her dreams, she hovered over her canvas, paintbrush poised, teetering on the edge of a choice that would alter everything. The question loomed larger than life. Could love and creativity triumph over the weight of tradition, or would she forever be bound to a legacy that felt stifling? Emily stared at the canvas, colors merging into a vibrant but chaotic swirl. Each stroke felt like a step deeper into a rebellion that both thrilled and terrified her. She inhaled sharply, grounding herself in the reality of her situation. The world outside her window was bright and alive, while her internal landscape felt cluttered with fear and uncertainty. What did she truly want? To unleash her creativity and pave her path, or to fulfill the obligations her family had laid before her? As days turned into weeks, the painting became her refuge, a sanctuary where doubts flitted through her mind but were largely drowned out by the rhythm of her brush against the canvas. Even so, she carried the burden of her parents' expectations like arrows in her back. The guilt was sharp, nosing around every exhilaration she felt as she immersed herself in hues and texture. One evening, after a particularly vibrant session, she stepped back to observe her work. It was unlike any piece she had ever created, a true reflection of her suppressed emotions, a manifesto of her desire to escape the constraints of familial loyalty. Necessary conversations swirled in her mind, drifting toward the bitter confrontation that lay ahead. There was no avoiding it. Her parents had yet to process the inheritance, nor had they grasped the true weight of her intentions. She had decided to share the full scope of her artistic aspirations, affirming her determination to transform the neglected studio into a community space, an art hub dedicated to fostering creativity in others, as her grandfather had done. The following weekend, under the pretense of a family dinner, the atmosphere in the house felt charged. Her mind raced, rehearsing her words as she set the table. Each fork, knife, and plate was a reminder of the traditional family setup she'd been raised in: neat, orderly, predictable. But was that Emily? When they sat down, the conversation danced around the mundane at first: work, the weather, and the latest TV shows. But she could feel the tension simmering below the surface. The moment came, like a wave crashing onto the shore, as she spoke with an unexpected steadiness. I want to use the inheritance to create an art space. A place for others to express themselves, just as my grandfather did. Her mother's fork clattered against her plate, the silence heavy and oppressive. What about the firm? All those years of sacrifices? Her mother's voice trembled on the edge of fury, mirroring the clash within Emily's heart. This is about more than just the firm. I am tired of living up to expectations that don't match who I am. I want to embrace my creativity, she replied, feeling a mixture of defiance and vulnerability. Her father's expression darkened. Do you think that's what your grandfather would have wanted? To tarnish the family name? The accusations flew, sharp and cutting. Emily fought the urge to withdraw. Instead, determination flickered within her, igniting a fierce need to stand firm. It's not tarnishing anything, it's honoring a legacy, my own legacy. We've been stuck in this cycle of duty for too long. They continued to argue, words throwing sharp barbs at each other, yet with every passionate exchange, Emily felt the chains of her upbringing tighten, but she also felt herself pushing against them. This confrontation revealed not just a difference of opinion, but an abyss separating her from the path her parents envisioned. She had given voice to her truth. As the evening wore on, she sensed she was at a crossroads, one that would define her future. This battle wouldn't be confined to this dinner. It was just beginning. What if her parents rejected her vision entirely? The thought rattled her, yet the conviction to pursue it sparked an unquenchable fire. In the quiet aftermath, when words fell silent and tension hung thick in the air, Emily felt overwhelming clarity wash over her. This was her moment to either yield to their ideals or forge a road less traveled, one where she was not only the painter, but also the canvas of her own life. Would her parents ever understand? Would she have to choose between her passion and her family? These questions spiraled in her mind as she stood in the middle of both worlds, paint-stained hands clutching a small piece of hope for the future. Determined to break free from the confines of expectation, she stepped back into the studio. The canvas waited, reflecting the tumult of her journey, a vibrant testament of what lay ahead. The pull to create surged through her, mingled with the possibility of perusing her artistic dreams. Yet uncertainty loomed. Something significant was shifting, pressing her toward the inevitable act of declaring her independence. As she contemplated the evolution of her life and the art she would create, a thought struck her hard. Was the potential to face rejection worse than the fear of living a life unfulfilled? The pivotal moment had come, teetering on the edge of discovery. The next choices she made would not only craft her future, but could potentially alter the very fabric of her family's legacy. Each stroke on the canvas reflected a future yet unwritten, calling her to step out of the shadows and into the light. The decision loomed. Could she redefine her history while embracing what her grandfather intended? In the silence of that room, amid the lingering tension, Emily knew that the battle for her identity had truly only just begun. And at that moment, the next revelation awaited her, a challenge that would demand everything she had. Would she take the plunge into the depths of her potential? As Emily continued to paint, each brushstroke became not just a move of color, but a manifestation of her internal struggle. The studio was filled with the scent of turpentine and the sound of her heartbeat thrumming in her ears, making her feel both alive and utterly terrified. What would happen next? She had crossed a threshold, announcing her intentions in a way that felt both liberating and reckless. Now she had to contend with the consequences. A bitter reality loomed large. Days passed, and the clouds of tension still hovered over her interactions with her parents. They no longer discussed the firm at dinner. Instead, conversations took on a muted quality, filled with pregnant pauses and sidelong glances. The family dynamic shifted, and Emily felt like an outsider in her own home. The warmth she used to find in her mother's laughter had been replaced by a chilly silence that spoke volumes. She couldn't help but question her resolve. Was her desire for freedom truly worth this emotional cost? Yet each visit to the easel brought clarity. The canvas was her safe haven, revealing secrets of her soul as she painted. One evening, while layering deep blues and fiery reds, the vision for her art space sharpened in her mind. This wasn't merely a shelter for artists. It was a sanctuary for misfits and dreamers, a place where creativity could flourish unfettered. The idea filled her with renewed purpose, igniting a flicker of hope. But how could she bring this vision to life without her parents' support? The very foundation of that dream depended on resources they controlled. Determined to find a path, Emily began researching art nonprofits, learning about how they managed to pull off their projects. The more she unearthed, the more equipped she felt. She could apply for grants, host workshops, and raise funds through community engagement. Every bit of knowledge chipped away at her feelings of helplessness, replacing them with a sense of empowerment. The prospect of building a platform for others to discover their creativity began to feel possible. She began drafting proposals for the art space, committing her ideas to paper. Initially, her handwriting was a shaky testament of her doubts. But as she wrote, her confidence blossomed. Words flowed, shaping a vision for her community: art hub, art classes for children, evening workshops, exhibitions featuring local artists. It was exhilarating, but the nagging doubts remained. What if her plans failed? What if she still had to face her parents' objections? She understood that pursuing her dreams might alienate her from those she loved, and the burden of that choice felt heavier each day. Would she be able to sustain this vision, independent of her family's approval? Despite the looming fear, the more Emily devoted herself to the proposal, the less anxious she felt about her parents' judgment. It was as if she were crafting a new identity, one built on her passion rather than the explicit desires of others. Her thoughts turned increasingly inward as she painted not just the canvas, but the future. She could manifest a vibrant splash of hope against the gray backdrop of her family's expectations. But with every brushstroke, she was forced to confront the reality of her decisions. Could this dream coexist with her family? Would they come around to understand her and the meaning behind this creative fight? It was a gamble, one that required immense bravery to uphold. Then one afternoon, as she stepped back from her work, a realization struck. It was time to present her proposals, to challenge the status quo with the fire of her newfound convictions. The prospect flooded her with a mixture of dread and excitement. The moment of confrontation loomed once again, the air thick with unspoken words, and she felt the stakes rising high. She gathered the courage to share her plans. Each heartbeat echoed a mantra in her mind. This is your truth. Tomorrow would not simply be another day. It would be the turning point that could alter the course of her life forever, igniting a new chapter that balanced artistry with audacity. Would she seize the moment and face the consequences, whatever they may be? The answer loomed like an unfinished canvas, begging for the first stroke of boldness to change everything. The morning dawned, casting a golden hue across Emily's studio, but the beauty of the light did little to calm the whirlpool of anxiety churning in her stomach.
Today was the day.
She held her breath, contemplating the papers strewn across her easel like battlefield declarations. Each page was carefully crafted, infused with her vision for the art space. Did they bleed resistance? Or would they signal the birth of something entirely new? With each passing hour, the anticipation gnawed at her. It wasn't the physical act of presenting her ideas that unsettled her. It was the emotional risk that housed within that simple act. Emily stood up, the gravity of her decision wrapping around her like thick fog. Should she genuinely believe that her dreams could withstand scrutiny? And as she prepared herself, she wondered how the confession would reshape their family dynamics. Returning to her pages, she meticulously reviewed each detail: projected budgets, potential curriculum outlines for classes, the outline for evening workshops. Her heartbeat quickened when she considered the prospect of standing before her parents, their disappointment a looming shadow threatening to dim the brightness she envisioned. She shook her head, dispelling the doubts that clung to her like cobwebs. Would she truly let fear dictate her life? As she practiced her presentation, the room echoed with her voice, firm yet trembling. Contrary to the mock conversations she had rehearsed in her mind, this time she approached the words with intention, each sentiment crafted not to deflect criticism, but to invite understanding. "This is about accepting who I am," she repeated, forcing her resolve into each articulation. When dinner time arrived, Emily felt a mixture of calm and chaos. She joined her parents at the table, searching their faces for hints of the impending storm. Her mother's gaze was fixed on her plate, while her father remained absorbed in his phone, a fortress against the emotional confrontation she was building up to. With an unexpected rush of courage, Emily cleared her throat, breaking the heavy silence. "I want to talk to you about something important." The words hung in the air like a heavy swing. Her parents looked up, curiosity momentarily flickering in their eyes. She launched into her proposal, her voice growing steadier as she spoke of art classes for children, community workshops, and local exhibitions. As she presented her vision, she noticed the faint flickers of recognition on their faces, though skepticism lingered. They exchanged glances filled with confusion, frustration evident as Emily navigated each clinical detail with the passion she scarcely believed she possessed. Her father finally spoke. "Emily, you understand the responsibilities of running a space like that. It isn't just about creativity." The resistance stung, but there was a glimmer of concern. Was it for her ambition or for the unknowns that lay ahead? "Exactly," Emily replied, her determination rising. "It's not just about creativity. It's about empowerment. It's about creating a space where people feel free to express themselves, regardless of their background." For a moment, the air thickened with tension, almost tangible, an electric charge between her and her parents. Unmasked frustrations erupted between them, hurt spilling over into the daylight, shadowed by their expectations for her life. The dinner table transformed into a battleground, and for the first time, Emily felt her voice resonate beyond her fears. She was not merely presenting a plan, but was staking a claim to her identity. But what became of their relationships? Would their love endure the test of her rebellion? As the conversation spiraled, a realization threaded through the chaos. She was grappling not just with her dreams, but with the intricate tapestry of familial love woven together, with unraveled threads of dreams unfulfilled. Each word felt like a pledge to navigate through a storm she had long avoided. When she left the table, heart racing, she sensed something transformative had occurred. Current had shifted, setting forth consequences she couldn't yet comprehend. Would her parents ever accept this new version of her? With each calculated risk she took in pursuit of her truth, she felt both exhilarated and terrified, poised at the intersection of hope and confrontation. The question hung heavily in the air. Was she ready to accept the cost of her authenticity? In the depths of her uncertainty, as she gazed back at her canvas awaiting new strokes from her brush, a thought emerged. What lies ahead could shatter her world or illuminate a path she never imagined possible. Emily's truth was unfolding. But at what price? The following days unfolded with a tightly wound energy that enveloped Emily. Each glance at her studio evoked a mix of anticipation and dread. The confrontation with her parents had not resulted in any concrete resolution. Instead, the air was heavy with unspoken words and unprocessed feelings. She needed to think, to plan her next steps carefully. Days turned to nights as Emily poured herself into her art. But this time, it wasn't just about technique or creativity. It was a deeper exploration of self. She found solace in her brushstrokes, the colors drawing out emotions she had long suppressed. Each piece she created was a mirror reflecting the tumult within her. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling of a persistent, gnawing anxiety that shadowed her progress. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the windows, lighting up her studio, Emily received a text from her mother. "Can we talk?" It was simple, but held weight. The honesty she expressed when standing up to her parents was not something they were used to encountering. Feeling a flutter of nervousness, she agreed, conscious of the new truth she was navigating. As she prepared to meet her mother, a voice in her head questioned if she was ready for another round of confrontation. Would the warmth of reconciliation cool the embers of her ambitions, or would this opportunity be the perfect stage to articulate her vision again, this time with greater clarity? At the cafe, the atmosphere was charged with an electricity of unspoken concern. Her mother appeared first, the soft lines around her eyes reflecting years of anxiety. Sitting down across from one another, Emily noticed that her mother's usual rigid posture had softened. "Emily," she began, hesitating as if seeking the courage to venture into the heart of the matter. "I thought maybe we could talk about what you said," her mother continued, looking down at her hands which fidgeted with a cup. "Your father and I were surprised." She paused, the words taking form as if shaped by the air between them, "by your passion." "You didn't give me much credit," Emily replied, her voice steadier than she felt inside. The conversation unfolded with an unanticipated honesty. Her mother confessed that her expectations stemmed from an intrinsic fear of failure, a fear that had been passed down through generations, wrapped tightly in the fabric of their family. Suddenly, Emily felt the weight of lineage pressing against her own transformative aspirations. "Don't you see? I need to forge my own path," she urged, seeking common ground. Her mother nodded, but skepticism lingered. Emily felt a rush of determination. She had to show her mother that this venture was about more than just her dreams. It was about legacy, about breaking free from the shackles of tradition that often suffocated their true selves. Subtly, she began to outline the community workshop she envisioned, expanding on her earlier proposal. As the ideas flowed from her, Emily witnessed a gradual, yet palpable change on her mother's face. Fear began to intermingle with curiosity. She was not only trying to convince her mother of a business model but also showcasing a potential future that encompassed shared values of creativity, empowerment, and acceptance. The conversation opened a floodgate, each second revealing deeper layers of understanding. But just as Emily felt the solid ground of engagement beneath her, her mother's hesitation reemerged. "It's just what if it fails? What if you're not ready?" "Isn't that a risk worth taking?" Emily countered. "Isn't that what it means to live? To fail and try again?"
"You taught me that."
But beneath her resolute exterior, doubt trickled in. Would her mother's approval lead her to abandon her own path by falling into the predictable trap of living someone else's dreams? Could she gamble with the delicate threads of their relationship for the pursuit of her own fulfillment? As their conversation concluded, both women felt the unmistakable shift of understanding, even if a definitive solution remained elusive. They departed with the seeds of a more profound dialogue planted within them. Later that evening, Emily returned to her studio. The universe of possibilities loomed increasingly vivid, yet so did the shadows of uncertainty. Clutching her brush, she stood before her canvas, and the question emerged once more. What sacrifices did she have to make? The price of authenticity was steep, and Emily felt it etched deeply into her core. The revelations she grasped about her family intertwined with her identity challenged her in unimaginable ways. Was she prepared to fully confront the expectations that snared her dreams? And just like that, a startling thought crept into her mind. What if the art space she dreamed of could also be a sanctuary for her family to find healing too? But as she considered this intertwining of dreams, she wondered whether this thought was a bridge to connection or merely another tether threatening to hold her back. The inkling of potential lay heavy in the air as she pondered. The ghosts of satisfaction mingled with fear. Where would it lead her next? The following day dawned with a brightness that felt almost ironic against the heaviness stirring within Emily. The ideas from her conversation with her mother echoed in her mind, merging with her artistic vision. Yet, as she prepared her workspace, motivational phrases fluttered off her tongue like unwanted props in a play. The fear of failure still loomed, a shadow she couldn't quite shake. She grabbed a blank canvas, the familiar texture rough beneath her fingertips. But instead of painting, Emily sat, staring into the distance, reflecting on the tangled feelings that had surfaced. The concept of an art space that served as a sanctuary wasn't just an idea. It encapsulated the struggle of her relationship with her family, her purpose as an artist, and the dual paths she must now navigate. What would it mean to facilitate a healing process within her family? Could she bear the weight of that responsibility? The specter of doubt threatened to undo her newfound clarity, making the decisions seem heavier. She began sketching not the usual vibrant forms, but a series of rough outlines or representation of herself, her family, and the space she envisioned. With each stroke, she confronted the question that pulsated through her. What if this project isn't merely my path, but also a gateway for both my dreams and theirs? With the prospect illuminating her process, she began mixing colors, envisioning the palette of emotions she hoped to capture. As the hours slipped by, each brushstroke morphed from hesitant to decisive. The act of creation ignited something dormant within her, a sense of agency. Emily started to see her art not solely as an individual expression but as a potential tapestry woven through shared experiences. There was a certain thrill in dismantling the barriers that confined her dreams to mere possibilities. Adrenaline thrummed in her veins as she started to formulate a plan, sketching out goals and timelines. She envisioned workshops that could foster not only her creative endeavors but connections among families, including her own. The idea of mentorship proved magnetic. Perhaps guiding others could simultaneously illuminate her own path. But the question remained, how much of herself would she have to sacrifice to ensure this space could serve as a refuge? The next day, Emily met with a few local artists, motivated by the shared desire to impact their community. She bore the slight apprehension of her family's voice echoing in her head, but she had already experienced the taste of hope through artistic collaboration. They discussed her vision of a healing space, intermingling art with vulnerability. As excitement filled the air, she felt a growing sense of purpose pulsate within her. Yet, amidst this invigorating momentum, another specter hovered, her parents' skepticism. What if they saw her plans as yet another folly? Determined to shield her vision from external judgment, she locked eyes with each collaborator, feeling a burgeoning validation emerging from their enthusiasm for her concept. In the days that followed, Emily committed herself to developing the workshops. The structure forced her to evaluate every aspect of her journey. Every conversation brimming with ambition stirred her spirit. The stakes intensified. The fading whispers of doubt were no longer stifled but flared into questions demanding answers. Would she earn her parents' respect or stubbornly forge ahead regardless of their acceptance? That afternoon, she returned home, armed with a binder filled with notes, updates, and sketches, a tangible representation of her resolve. Her parents were seated in the living room, and the air was thick with unspoken tension, reminiscent of their last interaction. With resolve simmering beneath her surface, Emily took a breath, ready to pursue not only her ambition but also to confront the boundaries that had limited her self-expression. But as she stepped into the living room, she couldn't shake the feeling that this would not merely be another attempt to justify her dreams. This time, the confrontation would demand clarity. How would she articulate the importance of both her artistic journey and her family's involvement without losing herself in their expectations? The moment had arrived. Her heart raced with anticipation of bridging the chasm that lay before her. Would it spark possibilities or reinforce the doubts that threatened to unravel everything she had tirelessly built? Emily took a cautious step into the living room, her binder held firmly against her chest, a shield against the scrutiny she anticipated. The stale air tasted of fear, her heartbeat thrumming in sync with the seconds ticking by. Her parents looked up, expressions unreadable, but she could sense the tension spilling over. "Hey, Emily," her mother started, an edge lacing her friendly tone. "How was your day?" "Good, I've been working on some new ideas." The words slipped out before she could overthink them. She could feel their eyes on her, gauging the gravity of her response. It was now or never. "I want to talk about something important," she began, her voice slightly quaking. "I've been thinking a lot about my art and how I want to dedicate myself to creating a space where others can explore their creativity and find healing." A sharp intake of breath met her ears, and for a moment, silence enveloped the room. Her father leaned forward, brow furrowed, eyes clouded with skepticism. "And what does that look like, exactly?" "You're talking about allowing those people to come into your life, into our lives. Do you really think we can make room for that?" They were probing her now, the familiar sting of their disbelief igniting a fire within. "I know it might sound naive, but it's more than just an idea. It's about building connections," she contended, every word carefully selected to confront the judgment she felt looming. "And what if it fails, Emily?" her father challenged, the weight of his disappointment already palpable. "Then it fails, but I need to try." With those words, the dam within her broke. She had always been hesitant to voice her ambitions in fear of disappointing them, a fear that threatened to swallow her whole. But the passion surging within her fostered an unanticipated bravery. "I need this for me and for us. It could bring us closer." Her mother's features softened slightly, but the concern never left her eyes. "Have you thought about how taxing this might be? You're opening yourself to more heartache, more possibilities for judgment." Emily could feel the protective instinct of her parents fortified yet suffocating. The reality of their words hummed through her body. It wasn't just an idea she was sharing, it was a confrontation of her worth and her need to break free from the limitations they had unintentionally placed upon her. "I have thought about it," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But what good is a dream if we keep it locked away? What if I can use this opportunity to show you that it's not just about art, but about healing the wounds within our family too?" A pause hung heavy in the air, punctuated by unspoken words and shifting glances. Emily could almost hear the gears in her parents' heads turning, weighing the implications of her aspirations against their fears. She saw them grappling with the possibility that she might be onto something far beyond their understanding. "Maybe it is worth exploring," her mother finally said, her tone measured but lacking the usual skepticism. "What are your tangible next steps?" Emily felt the rush of relief, mixed with renewed determination coursing through her. The acknowledgement that perhaps they were beginning to soften was a lifeline she clung onto tightly. "I want to set up workshops. I have the plans, structures, and themes," she said, her voice gaining strength. "I was hoping you might want to help me articulate how this could benefit us all. I need you both on this journey with me." But as her mother's eyes glimmered with contemplation and her father's brows still furrowed with doubt, Emily sensed that they were not yet sold. The moment was still fragile, a stark reminder that the conflicts and dialogues ahead would demand not just resilience, but a deeper examination of her family's dynamics. Would this be a moment of breakthrough, or the beginning of a long road fraught with resistance? The journey was far from over, and the flicker of hope she dared to ignite would need to withstand the winds of skepticism. Tomorrow, a pivotal meeting awaited with the artists who shared her vision, a chance for clarity that could either solidify her path or unravel her plans entirely. The time had come to face not only her family's expectations, but to confront the very essence of her dreams, and she felt the pressure rising beneath the surface. Emily awoke the next morning with the lingering sensation of unease tightening her chest. Despite the small victory she felt after last night's conversation, The reality of her ambitions loomed larger than ever. The thought of the meeting with the artists gnawed at her mind, a cacophony of what-ifs battering her determination. As she sipped her morning coffee, her gaze drifted to the binders she had lovingly filled with sketches and notes. Each page represented a fragment of her shattered self, piecing together a vision of hope. Yet, looking at that binder, doubt snaked in as she recalled her father's skepticism. Could she truly pull this off? The sun cast a warm glow over the room, urging her to step into its light and banish the shadows of her insecurities. She needed to arrive at the meeting not just as a hopeful artist, but as a leader grounded and self-assured. She meticulously flipped through her pages, focusing on the workshop outlines, the themes she planned to explore, and the potential benefits they might yield. But this was about more than just art. It was about healing for herself and her family. What if she framed her workshop as an opportunity for her parents too? The thought stirred something deep within her. Perhaps this was not solely her journey. If she could extend an invitation for them to explore their own creative barriers alongside her, it could strengthen their connection. The realization sent a pulse of energy. Through her she could transform her vulnerability into empowerment. With each thought, she formulated her strategy. Uncertainty would not derail her. She would embrace it as part of the process. Time sprinted ahead, and before she knew it, she was striding toward the local gallery where the meeting would take place. Each step felt like a declaration of independence, a stark contrast to the self-doubt that once held her captive. Upon arrival, she noticed the eclectic group of artists engaged in animated discussions, their passion palpable. Emily felt her pulse quicken, a mix of excitement and anxiety. She steeled herself, recalling her purpose, to embody the vision she had fought so diligently for. "Emily, over here," a familiar voice called out, pulling her from her reverie. It was Nicole, an artist she greatly admired. They exchanged pleasantries, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that the moment held greater significance. Nicole's enthusiasm was contagious, sparking a flicker of confidence within her. As the meeting began, Emily listened intently, absorbing the energy and ideas swirling around her. Participating in discussions, she found herself sharing bits of her own vision, her voice steady. The more she spoke, the more she realized that she was tapping into a reservoir of strength she hadn't fully acknowledged before. Ideas flowed freely, and Emily began sketching out a collaborative project that would invite not only personal exploration but also community involvement. Suddenly, it hit her. The missing piece was connection. The very thing her parents feared, she could wield as a tool for growth. When it was time to present her plans, Emily felt apprehension inching back in, but she reminded herself of the power behind her purpose. She stood before the group, nerves coiled tightly under her skin, and unleashed her ideas. The words poured out: creative healing workshops melding art with community connection. The room responded with nods and murmurs of approval, but as her presentation wrapped up, a raised hand from the back of the room pierced through her confidence. A man with a seasoned demeanor voiced his doubts explicitly. "How do you plan to address the varying skill levels among participants? It could end in chaos." His skepticism reverberated in her ears, igniting a flicker of the same doubt she had faced from her parents. The weight of his question felt monumental, threatening to unravel the momentum she had built. Looking into the eyes of her peers, Emily grappled with her thoughts. Would she retreat to the safer shores of hesitation, or would she confront this new challenge with the same vigor she had discovered? It was time to decide. Emily drew in a deep breath, aligning herself with the truth she had uncovered. The meeting could mark the beginning of a breakthrough, or it could expose her to even deeper vulnerabilities. What would she choose to do? Emily stood at the front of the room, heart racing, grappling with the weight of the man's question. The silence stretched, filled with the nervous energy of the artists around her. Within that charged atmosphere, she realized that her response could be a defining moment not just for her project, but for her sense of self. "What if," she began, her voice steadying with each word, "we design the workshop to include tiered activities? Each skill level could find a space for exploration. Beginners could focus on the essence of expression, while more experienced participants could delve into complex techniques or collaborative pieces. The idea blossomed as she spoke. This could actually foster mentorship among participants, enhancing their experience by learning from one another. With that, not only did she courageously digest the critique, but she also spun it into a potential strength of her vision. The furrows in the faces around her relaxed, and she sensed moments of understanding amongst her peers. A flicker of satisfaction ignited within her. She had reframed uncertainty into opportunity. The initial doubts nudged her to create an inclusive environment rather than retreat into the shadows of failure. She could feel a shift, both within herself and in the room. The artists were curious now, wanting to explore how her vision could evolve from a simple idea to a dynamic experience. As the discussion flowed, Emily found herself immersed in the exchange of ideas. Tentative at first, she tossed out suggestions about integrating music and movement into the workshops, a tangible connection that would augment the healing aspect she yearned for. Her peers reacted enthusiastically, adding layers to her proposal that resonated with their individual experiences. By the end of the meeting, she had transformed uncertainty into a potential blueprint for her project. Emily could sense the momentum, the palpable promise of collaboration planting seeds of confidence within her. As she gathered her materials to leave, she felt lighter than when she had entered. Yet doubt lingered, casting shadows on her triumph. What if they only saw her as inexperienced? What if her parents were right to doubt her capabilities? Those thoughts fluttered insidiously in her mind as she walked away. Each step resonated with the push of her burgeoning resolve, but the question of acceptance remained a heavy shroud. Later that evening, back at home, she sprawled on her bed, the binder spread open, exploring the pages of visions that mixed dreams with frustrations. Her thoughts danced between possibilities for what the workshops could become, but surged back to her parents' skepticism. The fear that laid beneath their doubts raised its head, a disastrous moment where her aspirations could fizzle away. What if, despite the room full of support, it all unraveled at the feet of her family? She couldn't ignore the transformative rush she felt today, though. From confronting the critic in the room to unlocking the collaborative spirit of her peers, Emily had initiated something significant. The fear of failure no longer paralyzed her, it propelled her instead. There was still a path to tread, an ascendant path that would require more than innovative ideas. Would she find the courage not only to present her plans to the artists, but also to face her parents and lay bare her ambitions? The imperative to prove herself burned bright as she realized. The journey had just begun. Determined, Emily glanced at her reflection in the mirror and whispered, "It's time." And as she prepared for tomorrow, a new question unfurled in her mind. How would she bridge the gap between her artistic aspirations and the doubts of her family? The confrontation awaited. Emily stood in her studio, the sun filtering through the window and illuminating the paint-splattered walls. Today wasn't just another day of creation. It was the day she would present her vision to her parents once more. Tension knotted in her stomach, but determination pulsed at her core. She had poured herself into her dreams, and now it was time to solidify her path, one she explicitly chose for herself. The meeting with the local artists had sparked a fire within her. Their enthusiasm reinforced her vision of an art space dedicated to healing and creativity. It no longer felt like a mere plan. It was a mission born from a deep understanding of her family's nuances, and it could fortify her ties to them while breaking the cycle of suffocation their expectations had created. Taking a deep breath, Emily organized the notes she meticulously crafted after the meeting, a presentation filled with not only logistics, but also heart. Section by section, she articulated a vision not just for herself, but for her family too. This could be an opportunity for them to connect, to heal. She envisioned her parents engaging with the community, discovering empowerment through creativity, and perhaps, finally unlocking their own suppressed dreams. When the door swung open that evening, Emily confronted her parents at the dinner table, the familiar warmth replaced by a palpable tension. Their expressions flickered between anticipation and concern, embodying the familial divide she had grown to understand all too well. This was her moment, and she would step forth unabashed. "Can we talk?" she began, her voice steady. I want to share more about the art space idea I mentioned. The silence thickened. Her mother's brow furrowed, and her father crossed his arms defensively. Yet Emily felt unfazed. She was ready to bridge the gap. She spoke passionately about creating workshops that welcomed individuals of all skill levels, sharing how the community would foster connection and healing, inviting her parents along this immersive journey. But what if it fails? Her father interrupted, skepticism piercing the room like a blade. Then I'll learn, Dad, Emily countered, her resolve unwavering. What's important is that we try. I want us to explore together, as a family. We've hidden behind expectations for too long. With every word, she noticed a slight softening in their expressions, an emergence of dialogue rather than the usual monologues of judgment. They weren't retorting. They were listening. Emily continued, revealing how mentorship roles within the workshops could foster understanding and connection. She articulated her yearning for her parents to reconnect with their passions, like dusting off a long-forgotten dream. This space isn't just for me. It could be something we build together. A healing for all of us. Her mother's voice trembled slightly, breaking through the tension. And if your goals don't align with what we envision for you, then we redefine our legacy together, Emily replied, feeling the truth of her statements echo back at her. This is a chance for us to redefine what success looks like in our family, a space for love, creativity, and support, coupled with our roots. The conversation flowed, her parents slowly revealing their fears of failure, of disappointment, of losing their control over her future. But Emily's heart soared. This was a dialogue, not a battle. They weren't stone walls. They were human beings wrestling with their fears, just like she was to. As the evening waned, an unexpected ease settled among them. When they finished talking, Emily felt a shift, a real connection had sparked. Each gave a tentative promise to consider the project, their acknowledgement alone enough to nourish her spirit. Days turned into weeks as the art space took shape. Emily felt an exhilarating blend of empowerment and love, channeling her energy into each workshop. She welcomed local artists in collaboration, launching initiatives that attracted a wave of participation. The workshops flourished, transforming into sanctuaries of creative expression. Striking a balance between her artistic aspirations and familial ties became a tapestry woven with understanding. As her parents began to embrace this adventure, she noticed subtle changes. Their laughter came more easily now, and shared moments forged a newfound respect for each other's paths. One particularly joyous evening, when the workshop had just concluded, her father approached Emily, gratitude vivid in his eyes. I didn't understand what you were trying to build, he admitted, but now I see it's more than about the art. It's about life and healing and us. Emily felt an overwhelming sense of achievement wash over her. Thank you for giving me the chance to show you, she whispered back, their connection palpable in that moment, the transformation complete. Standing in her studio surrounded by vibrant art, Emily had not just achieved a dream, she had sculpted a new version of herself. Confidence radiated from her being as she recognized the journey hadn't just been about the art space, but about reclaiming her identity. This was Emily the artist, the visionary, and the loving daughter willing to transcend expectations. It was with solid confidence she realized that the 26M inheritance had given her more than financial freedom. It had gifted her something priceless, a life authentically lived, and the creative expression that could potentially heal her family's legacy. As she looked out the window, she saw a world brimming with opportunities, ready for her mark. And it was time to seize the next moment. You need to subscribe now to the channel to stay updated on exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like right now to fuel the algorithm, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. Your engagement matters, and only true fans of personal overcoming stories know how crucial it is to support through these actions.